13, 14 councilmen. Okay. On this working session, Rosie has distributed 3 things: the preliminary wish list, which is for us to discuss, correct, add to. This is not set. This is trying to get it right. I'm grateful to her editing things that have come in. So what appears is sort of in an edited version, but it's really getting people positioned to talk about that specific item. There is also distributed the GSD and USD General Fund administrative expenditures, which add up to $355 million by line item, which is also a useful reference for people to have. And then the ordinance 2017-722. I think there is expressed interest by people on the committee and in the council about having another session next week, next Thursday at 4 o'clock, and asking that there will be questions to ask departments to come back and comment on as we work our way through the wish list. I just want to bring this up so that people keep a track of questions that they want asked, and asked in kind of an official way, that we can do that also next Thursday. And again, this wish list, will correct it here, add to it, subtract from it, think about it. Rosie, with Rosie's help, will recirculate this wish list to everybody in the council. Everybody in the council will be given 100 votes to allocate their preferences on the operating budget wish list. We will tabulate that. This is our budget together. And then we'll advance that document as the process goes through from this. This does not have as many sources on it as we will need, and so we will need to have follow-on discussions with everybody about what good sources of money are. So to that end, I don't know that there's any way to tackle this other than just to walk through some of the specifics. Actually, with the vice, I'll turn this over to the vice chair for any comments to get us started.
I think probably more importantly, we'll just go down a list and discuss the wish list item as it relates to the respective council member. And we just keep the meeting moving, and keep the conversation going too. We don't need to shuffle no more tables.
Yeah, if I may though, may I? Because I've been pretty adamant about bringing departments back in to talk again. 15 minutes is not necessarily long enough to really delve into some of the numbers. So while we go through this, I guess my question is that as we progress with the budget process, when we have the departments back in, will we in fact have enough time to be able to drill down a little bit harder, ask a little more deep questions, and then come back and add to the list, take away, or whatever we feel like is necessary then?
Well, I hope so. And we'll use Jim Schulman's constant question as an example, which is how many unfilled department positions there are. That's been asked to people. I don't know that the responses have come back, but again, we should be aware of how many unfilled positions there are. And we have every reason to follow up on that.
And specifically with schools, because it represents roughly 40% of our budget, have they given us any answers that we asked them specifically in their budget hearing? Have they responded to anything?
I haven't got anything from schools.
Okay.
And I know we have some outstanding from MTA also, as it relates to Council Lady Wiener's question. Did they respond back to you?
Vacancies, but I need to go through each department to see which ones were missing.
The school specifically has not given us any response to any questions that were asked. Okay.
But equally, for these past questions, Rosie's accumulating the answers, and then we'll get them back out, and then that'll help shape who we need to ask back with specific questions. And this group will determine that in terms of our questions, and as we find ourselves puzzles or have an open-ended question. Okay.
John, are we going to have a timeline by which they have to get that information back to us, so we have ample time to review it before we meet next week?
Very good point. And I think, ASAP. In some cases, it's been several weeks since the hearing. So, but I think we have to hold their feet to the fire and then ask them back.
So then, let me throw this out if I may. If we don't get responses back from these departments, is it fair game to say that's where we go after money?
Well, if I were them, I would be concerned.
Okay, that's all I want to ask.
I would be concerned. All right, so this is organized by department on this list, which is really people listening to the budget hearings and coming up with questions and discussion points about items. It's not organized by councilmen as much as it is organized by department. So, and really in the order of the hearings themselves. So, and again, I'll get Tanaka to lead us through some of this. The first one, trustee tax relief to market and promote those vulnerable. Really, I think Council Lady Hurt's idea was if more people knew about the tax relief programs, they would use it. And isn't that a useful thing, particularly for our vulnerable populations, to know about the tax relief program? She has $50,000 in that. I think let's not vote on any of these right now as much as to discuss it, and particularly people who are here with these items. Yes, Kathleen?
That's what I wanted to get clarification on real quick. So we've got this in front of us. I think some of us have mentioned that we don't see things that we requested. So are we going to get another one of these that we're going to be scoring the 100 points and things
Yes,
on?
the completed list, and as you go through and go, I had this item and it didn't get in, bring
This is
that
like
up.
our worksheet.
This is a working copy. Bring that up, and then when we repost it, it'll be a better. Now, it's not going to be particularly editorial because I think we're the editorial part of that, as people point out on this. It'll probably have more of this thing and ask me or Council Lady Vircher or anybody else what is meant by the two appraisers, for example, at the assessor properties, and they can provide clarification. So any further discussion on Council Lady Hurt's idea for the trustee program?
I have a question, and this is probably something we just need to get information from, but I don't know from whom. Is it possible that we could partner with community centers that are engaging with the population that we want to address, the local churches, the local grocery stores, and people that may engage these people on a day-to-day basis and help get the word out, and that may cut the cost from 50.
And I know Council Lady Van Rees has advocated for 50 Forward. That would be a platform for doing this also. Okay.
We talked a little bit about too, NES, most of this population still pays their bill by paper. And so they get the bill in the mail, and it has that really cool insert that they read. And to be able to work with NES on information about relief services actually in the bill, I think would be one really quick way to touch everybody.
And it may be free.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it
I
would
think it has
be.
to be sponsored by a nonprofit, which is like what you just said. If we ask
We're the government, we are a nonprofit.
Okay. All right. So yes. Oh, Council Lady Henderson.
And is 50,000 just arbitrary?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
So I guess that's.
Right. And that. And again, for everybody's evaluation, and I think there are no real rules here. You can cut that to a different number that you then want to vote for. Yes.
Do we know how many people are eligible for tax relief versus how many people took advantage of it? Do we have that figure?
I think her question came up that there is a disparity was indicated in the hearing, that there were more people who could take advantage of it, and that's one of the reasons for her suggestion.
But we don't know the figure.
I don't remember those.
50%, 40%.
But again, invaluably, if Rosie's going to keep as good a minutes as we can on that, I think that's an excellent question.
This is, though, I think the reason it's important to have the departments back in, because we can sit here and talk about this all day long, but if we don't fully understand it, like we're going to come down to one of mine here in a minute that I made a comment during the hearings, but frankly, I don't remember the exact reasoning for it. So I think that's why we go back through and we get a little more detail.
Okay. All right. Request for detail.
Chair, isn't the onus sort of on the person who's making the proposal that $50,000 to the Council Lady perhaps needs to speak to Trustee Cardwell? She needs to do this research and then support her case for that.
Yep, I agree.
Second.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, and hopefully Rosie wonderfully is going to to make that note for Council Lady Hurt.
So I'm going to ask a point of order. Mr. Jameson, if this is just a work session, are we voting or
No,
how do we?
we are not voting.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand where we are.
We are not voting, we're advocating
Okay.
with each other.
On that trustees issue, I get email or phone calls, how many people
Hold on, we got
took
too many people
advantage
speaking.
from the trustees
Nina,
office.
can you start all over again?
And can you have like raise your hand and then acknowledge them and then that way everybody's like,
Yeah. So before you speak, you'll be acknowledged by the chair.
Okay. Shirley, Council Lady Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. So following up Councilman Hager's question about how many people are eligible and so forth, trustees office clearly have the list, and each time when the tax break or check was sent, trustees office will give us the list of the people in my district. So clearly, it will be just a communication with the trustees office should be able to follow up this amount and so forth.
Thank you, Councilman Davis.
Oh, wait, my hand was raised. Right now. Now, this program that no one knows about, or not a lot of people do, there's a tax program that Metro Action has a pot of money for too. If we're going to use that money to advertise for that program, they should be both in conjunction with the one for Metro Action too. Because there's a pot of money, if you're 62 or older, you can qualify. With the tax freeze and the refund, I believe it's 64. You know, and I agree with Glover, we may need to have people back, but if we're going to do that, we need to add in advertising that program at the same time too.
Okay. Thank you. And again, this is an opportunity to advocate because ultimately your 100 votes will be important, and it's going to be up to the sponsor to really go advocate for people, but we're talking it over without them here. Yes?
So I think Council Lady Van Rees has got a very good idea of the NES piece of it.
Yes.
I really believe with the, I don't remember what the ad watts or what's ad or whatever they call that thing in there. I really believe that if we approach them, it wouldn't cost anything for us to put that in there.
That's exactly right.
So I think that's a good idea, and if we're going to go down this path on this particular one, that's an area I think we explore.
Thank you. All right, the next one, Councilman Scott Davis, Assessor of Property, 2 appraisers.
We need this position. Number one, Vivian has came to us and told us that she needs these 2 assessors to be in compliance, especially right now. We have lots of assessments going on. We have a heavy tax increase year because of all the great development and going on here in this Nashville period. And we need to fund these positions.
Okay. Yes, Council Lady Allen.
yeah, at the hearing though, Talia presented like what the rules are as far as being in compliance with the state, as far as how many assessors you have to have. And upon doing math, we discovered that we are compliant. And we only have assessments I know they're constantly looking at property, but we do the assessment every 4 years, but they're looking at properties like now they're finishing up this year starting. So what I understood is that we are in compliant from
Okay.
her. And I think property assessor Wellhoyt even said that. She said, we're in compliant, but what she was looking at is like future growth. So I do think that's something we should keep on the radar, but should we fund a whole position when, when the work is not necessarily there yet and we're
So,
compliant?
Council Lady, with your permission, we'll ask that specific question of our assessor. Are we compliant?
Well,
And
it
what
was
are the
answered,
rates? Well-
it was answered at the hearing. Both of them said, Councilmember said, yes, we are. The assistant said, yes, we are. The finance and the attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, she has responded, but that would be in our Q&A stack. Yes, Council.
Now, with the load of work that's going on, now, at this time, and we may have to clarify, they probably, more than likely, if she's in compliance, now I'm not the assessor, but with the amount of work that's coming to that office, and this is a very, very important assessment year due to the increases all over the map.
Okay. Okay. Council Lady
So my
Allen.
understanding is that the bulk of the work right now is going to be the appeals, and that's a different set of people that they've hired specifically to deal with that, not to be doing new appraisals. And she talked specifically about who they brought on to do that piece of it, so I feel like that part's covered.
Councilman?
And if we can get clarification, Rosie, if we can get clarification from the assessor's office with Ms. Wilhoit, if I remember the number correctly, they were anticipating an additional 9,900 properties at the next assessment, of which there's 1 to 45, if I remember the numbers correctly, 1 to 4,500 assessors that were needed. And so I think it's something, yeah, we look at, but if we can go back in, because I believe we all remember the conversation, they are in compliance now. And so, you know,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Chair, also, I would like to get clarity as it relates to the workload for appeals. I don't know if it was stated or if I read it, but the projection that they thought they were going to receive in appeals is lower than the number than what they anticipated.
So we'll ask the assessor to get back in touch with us on appeals and workload, and again, asking the questions, she may have answered it, but.
Can you indulge me also, Chair? Director Lomax O'Neill has a.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to remind you all that in terms of, for the appeals, those requests that she had for the budget are recommended in this budget. So she received everything that she asked for to handle those appeals.
To handle the appeals.
Yes,
Great.
everything is in the recommended budget to cover that.
Right, that's very valuable. On to Councilman Glover and Council Lady Allen, the Special Sessions Court.
I'm going to ask that we wait on this because I need to go back in and re-ask. I know specifically I asked the question in the conversation, but it was early in the hearings, and I would like, when we get back together next week, to talk further on that, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Council Lady
So I
Allen?
think what I had written down was the state trial courts had asked for $155,000 for order of protection, which seemed like an important thing to me. So I'm not sure if that's the same.
No,
or something different.
I think you're right. It's just before. I'm not going to debate it right now because I just need to go back in and make sure I understand, because I know specifically what I asked for. I just need to make sure that I am clear on that.
Yeah, Councilman Mendez.
One of the ones that I had that's not on the list is for state trial courts, and it was for adding a position for $120,800. So I don't know whether this is.
I think it is. I think it is.
That's what they called it.
Yeah.
Well,
Do you know?
But it's state trial court, not general sessions.
Okay.
Okay.
And so if there's a request for general sessions that I'm not remembering, it happens to be the exact same dollar amounts. I don't.
No, I think that's why I'm asking to and come back to this next week, because I think you're right.
I've emailed you, Chair and Rosie and Mr. Jameson, the request again, because it listed specific
Thank you.
funding sources.
Okay.
So hopefully we can get that updated.
Good. Thank you. Council Lady Allen.
I was thinking that this was, because it's under general sessions, I got you on that, but I do want to throw out there that I do know the docket handling environmental court is growing, and it's getting large, and something to put on our radar, we're not going to do it this year, but maybe next year, is that we put in dollars to fund building another courtroom over there, and it hasn't been done. Like, you know, you put capital dollars to build that, to build out that courtroom. It's not done yet, and with all this short-term rental stuff, they're seeing more and more violations in that. That's our code and environmental court, and I'm just saying that because I had a case down there with a non-compliant neighbor, but that docket is getting large. It's only done a couple of times a week, so I do think either we need to look at and see what the status is of the capital funding to build out that courtroom so that they can handle the environmental codes, because that's what pertains to most of us here, and to find out if that space is because we've already funded it. I just don't know what the timeline for doing it.
For the CIB.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll make a note of the CIB.
And I don't think
courtroom.
they need a special, extra employee to handle that docket, just the space to do it.
But for the moment, we definitely, it's the state trial courts for $128,000 for special order of protection. Okay? Great. Thank you for the correction.
Chair, Mr.
Yes, Councilman Hager.
You know, I do order protections all the time. The discussion here is determine how many of them are being done at general sessions, how many done at the circuit, and how many are done at juvenile court. That's what you got to find out first.
Okay.
Before you start saying we need all these special judges or masters to do these. We've talked about At one time, General Sessions bring them all over here to circuit, but I don't think that's gonna happen. And then we talked about some of them being down in juvenile court. So that's the first thing you need to determine, how many are being heard over here, how many are being heard over in General Sessions.
Okay.
I go and defend those a lot of times myself. So they're still being done in both courts.
So the question for you is this: how many are being done in the various courts? To ask that and get that circulated back to the council.
And that's what I think the state courts were trying to do, was to use Dana to do more of the order protections because she's technically a court officer for Judge Gayton, as I
Okay,
recall.
thank you. Councilman Mendez.
Right, that's exactly right. Dana Ballinger is assigned to Judge Gayton, supposed to be law clerk, courtroom deputy, and she's not been doing that job. She's been doing orders of protection, and the idea from the state trial court was to get her to do the order of protection full-time and staff the other position that Judge Gayton is supposed to have. And with General Sessions, I know that's sort of snuck into the conversation here. I mean, my strong suggestion, and you guys, like, I don't practice there all the time, so I can say it more freely than people who do. Like, they don't have dockets in the afternoon. The dockets are slammed in the morning because the judges have one docket in the morning. And until the judges have a morning docket and an afternoon docket, and they actually use courtrooms in the afternoon to close business, then we should be cautious about funding more stuff over there.
Okay. Any further discussion on the state trial courts? Yes.
Go to Councilman Davis.
Councilman Davis.
I know in the 4% fund, this is a question, we can use that for construction, right? Or if we
That's the
can,
new position.
if that was possible.
I don't really
We
have.
need to add a new courtroom.
I think that's a CIB, CSP.
We have requested a courtroom. We just need to make sure that the money's still there.
Okay.
That was it.
But I
Okay.
realized that was totally different.
So while we're not voting, I get that piece of it. This one specifically, I would like for us to nail down. So if we can have this come back and talk to us to specifically make sure we identify it and understand, because I think Councilman Mendez, I think Councilman Hager, I think several of us we're thinking it's one thing, and so let's just get, if we can, if they can come back and get clarity, that'd be great.
And again, we're not voting, but we
Right.
are discussing, and you will be indicating your preference. So
Right.
having the whole discussion is great. Yes, Kathleen.
Since we're throwing around building a courtroom, not building a courtroom, they have courtrooms. Talia, could you address, last year, weren't they given a pot of money through capital expenditures or capital spending plan to finish out a courtroom, upgrade the floors, add a staircase? Could you talk to some of that?
Yeah.
That's already done.
Yes.
So they already have the money to do that, they just haven't done it.
The money has been allocated, and General Services has been working with them on space planning and trying to get everything moving.
Okay.
So they're having routine meetings with them.
Okay.
We're like, state for the record, my memory actually served me.
Because they had requested
All
that
right.
each
Right.
judge have a
All right.
courtroom, and they were short a courtroom before they were rotating.
So,
So that money is there, and they're working on it, so they'll have that available, because if so, then that will help the environmental docket, because they could have it.
I mean, the money's been allocated in the capital to
They
give
put
them.
out the request for bids.
oh, okay.
Last time I talked to Nancy about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's in place.
So here, Councilman Gilmore and Councilman Leonardo, salaries for assistant DAs, which our DA spent some time talking to us about, $760,000. Councilman Mendez.
This is another one where I had a request that was in a different dollar amount and for different sources, and I sent that to y'all by email. I had put it in for 700 rather than 760.
Okay.
And honestly, the reason was I just felt like General Funk had rounded up a little bit. And I thought 700 would do it. And we're not really talking about funding sources today, but this was just to remind everybody, last year, the starting salaries for public defenders got increased, and because the state government funds a good part of the DA's salaries, they didn't get a similar increase. And so we've got public defender's office is, I think, $10,000, $15,000 higher than PD's office on starting salaries. And even the public defender, Don Diener, came and supported the idea of getting both sides of the courtroom balanced there.
Okay. Councilman Hager?
What I asked was, how many of the lower paying assistant DAs he has versus the PDs, and I think it's about an $8,000 range difference in the pay scale. So my question was, how many assistant DAs do you have that are making less than the assistant PD's bottom salary? That's the question.
Okay. And we'll ask to get that specific answer back to you, Councilman Pridemore.
Yes, mine is, I know we're not discussing as important about the source, funding source, but considering what is written down here, it's actually connected to another item regarding the hospital. You know, the funding source mentions the MPD body cameras, the funding for that, which I don't have a problem with the funding. I mean, the assistant DA or the hospital funding. But my issue is if they take the source of the body cameras, as much discussion we had, and as many groups within the community that were demanding those body cameras, my fear is if you take the funding away from the body cameras, somehow the city is still going to have to come up with that $20 million to satisfy the initial request. And because of that, I'm afraid all we'll end up doing is we'll be taking the money, but then somehow we're going to have to, it's going to be funded. So some other agency, way after, department, after the budget has already been approved, is going to come up with either we're going to find $20 more million, or several departments are going to have to sacrifice some of their funding.
Take your point. We take your point, but we're going to try to not have source discussions. I have that in a separate discussion so that we don't attach. Yes, Council Lady Johnson.
I agree with Councilman Pridemore, but I would like to add my name in support of what Councilman Mendez recommended, which is the $700,000. And a question for Talia, the source, I know you're saying, I just still have a question. That's outlined here from the Register of Deeds office. Is that something that we can even pull from?
No, it's not.
Yeah. No. Okay. And we'll have a separate source discussion. Councilman Glover.
I want to echo Councilman Hager here. I would like to have the general come back in and talk to us. Let's zero in on that number. Let's make sure that Councilman Mendez, if the 700,000 is the real number, whatever. But I agree there's an inequity here, and we need to go to work in that arena.
So exact number from our Attorney General. Okay. Let's move on to Historic Commission. Council Lady Allen, 2 staff positions.
Yes, thank you. This is an issue that has come up frequently. Two issues are driving it. One, they currently are operating without an architect, and a whole lot of people who come to them are architects who would appreciate having that expertise on their board. And so they had asked for a half position last year, which would have enabled them to slide someone over into some other responsibilities and create an architect position. They weren't able to do that last year. They're still asking to be able to do that. Secondly, if they had an architect, then they could free up someone else to do more inspections. What's happening now is, like our codes department, they're often operating on a reactive mode as opposed to proactive, and they are not able to get the inspections early in the project, so they show up at the end and go, oops, that was the wrong kind of siding, you should have checked with us, take it all off at a cost of $20,000 to the owner. When if they had been able to inspect it early on game, they would have said your sample is not correct, and it wouldn't have cost the owner anything. So I think just in order to make our historic preservation districts function better, and I think our historic preservation is part of what drives Nashville's economy, both from people moving here and from people visiting the downtown areas. It would just function much better if they could get that position. So I
Thank
think
you.
people would work on that.
Anybody else?
I was going to say, I agree with that,
Okay.
that we need to add someone there.
Okay.
And it's really about, people are talking about gentrification and things not making Nashville, Nashville. And I think if we had someone serving in this role, we could really strengthen on preservation of a lot of our historical stuff, so I do support.
How many positions?
Councilman Hager.
They asked for two. One was the architect and one is administrative. They currently have, I think, 5, I'm not sure. I have to look, I'll look that up. No, they have no architect. I mean, they have other people. I can tell you in a minute.
Okay.
The
So what
following
would
item is the same thing.
related? We'll show
But I don't know what the number
one more
I just
question.
want to, Council Lady Allen, if we look at, excuse me. Go ahead.
It's choking you up. See, it's
Just
your
I got called up. One FTE, what would that cost?
Say that again?
One FTE, what would that cost?
They were different positions, so it's not, you can't just divide it exactly in half. I'd have to go back and look and
That's
see.
what I think they have
John,
80.
One was the staff person, one was an
Go
architect.
ahead. Yes, Council Lady.
So could we get in touch with this work and ask them
Yes.
specifically what their need is and what the cost of that need would be in terms of the level of the employee or half position
Well,
that
I
they
asked
want to
him that, he
receive?
gave me a figure of 160,200, I think, and he said divide that by 2. And he said I need 2, but if I get 1, just put 80,100.
So roughly 80,000.
But would
The
that,
second position shows that one position.
would that be appropriate, an appropriate amount to hire an architect?
The 80, I would,
Probably not.
I don't know. I mean, when I asked what you need to do what you want, I thought they said 124.
Okay, that was their answer. But let's follow up on that specifically. All right, this is the same discussion. Council Lady Van Rees
Yeah, I think
on
that,
her request.
It's the same thing. I think that the number, as Rosie has indicated, came from that, but I'm not
Okay.
exactly sure as to whether or not that's the question that was asked.
We'll
was
ask him which
the answer
one for an architect and one for just an
Yeah.
FTE.
For FTE.
But I think that if, in looking at the difference between the two, I think the primary need is the architect. And so if we need to give them 1 and not 2, then it would be that
It
one.
would be there. Okay. Seeing no one else, Councilman Schulman, Human Relations Program Specialist.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this follows sort of with what Council Lady Allen was talking about with the Historic Commission. Last year, the Human Relations Commission came to us and had asked for half a position. What they told us at that point was that they were basically swamped administratively. They have a lot of stuff going on, and they didn't get the position last year, and we didn't fund it. So they came back this year. They didn't get it this year either. I think my concern, the reason I put it back in here, I think I've been in last year as well, is that they've got a whopping total of 4 people that work for that commission. It's on H44.5 of the budget. So they're having to do all their administrative work, I think, by themselves. And based upon the questions that we asked, Melanie, sorry, based upon Ms. Fowler Green, I think she was saying, one of the questions I asked was, how many programs do you have? They work with all kinds of different organizations. I think they're working with 40 different organizations. They have 51 programs going on. They're not able to keep up. And the way I look at it is we have positions, if you look through this budget, there are all kinds of positions being added. This one has 4 people working in it, and they can't keep up, and they can't get a position to help them. So it was. I asked Ms. Fowler Green how much it was. 63,100, and that's what I put in.
Okay, Council Lady.
So I have a couple of questions. Thing number 1, I always look at return on investment. So for that $63,000, how will that help them expand what they do to help service the population that they work with?
All right, so we've all been in situations where we have to, if we're working on something, we have to step in and do something, right? So whether it's make copies or do the administrative work or put together the packets or whatever. So I think what's happening over here is they've got 4 people that are supposed to be out there doing stuff, and they're back in the office having to put together the packets and type the stuff and copy and do all the legwork that if somebody was in the office doing that, they could actually be going out and actually adding to the 51 programs they've got.
Okay, so I have another question. Just in terms of an administrative assistant position, $63,000 seems like a lot more than we pay in the council office, and a lot of other departments pay pay for an equivalent position. So can we possibly take a look at what the specific description of that job duty
Sure.
would be and
Okay.
see where it aligns?
It's a program specialist. So what I did was when they were up there, I just simply asked what was the actual total.
Talia's got it.
Okay, and they said it was 63,100.
The 63,000 does include fringe benefits. So
The
that
63 includes fringe?
includes
Yeah.
fringe
Okay.
for that position. And also program specialist, she characterized it to us as being more than an admin assistant. Also a position to provide support, kind of be the project lead around compliance.
Okay.
I support it. I think it's fine.
Thought I'd share that with you. So
Councilman-
it is more than an
Council Lady Johnson, we'll go over to this side.
Thank you. I'm in support of that position. Speaking of return of investment, if that office has one more staff, they could go after grant program. Currently, they are unable to do so.
Okay.
So I would defer exact amount of what we need to investigate. However, I do support that position, so we will get more done
Okay.
with
Council
this
Lady,
amount.
Councilman Glover?
Here's the question I would have. What is the redundancy we have between the federal government and the state government on what this agency does exactly? And that's the question I would ask.
Okay.
So, and I realize it's not a popular question, but I think it's one that needs to be asked.
But you're good at asking them.
Well,
I know that.
We're here for the discussion and here to advocate, and I think this is great. No further discussion on the audit. Myself and Councilman Glover, $100,000 for additional audits for the audit committee. I think this is, myself being on the audit committee, that there's a lot to audit out there, frankly. And some of this is contract work from very skilled auditors, and that's where the $100,000, that's probably 4 or 5 separate audits, but if you look at things in the health space, et cetera, that it seems appropriate to spend this additional money to make sure that other money is spent well. That's my pitch, Councilman Gallagher.
Well, the only thing I'm going to say, I was on the audit committee for 4 years prior to this term, and I will tell you, yeah, there's not enough money there to do what they really need to do to audit us. I mean, we're $2.2 billion, operation, so yeah, I fully support this.
Council Lady.
Well, I think too, when we think back on some of the, issues that we have dealt with and that we've given them expanded scope of practice to fulfill those duties, it only stands to reason that we would give them more money to do what we've asked them to do. So I agree.
Okay. Seeing nobody else, let's turn the page and go on. Council Lady Bircher, the beer board. No, I'm going to try to push the discussion along. Stop me if people want to have more discussion, because this is an important way, I think, of getting support from other council people for their proposals.
So,
And add me there too.
so, like many of our departments,
I just want to make sure that you all, I said this in the meeting, but I don't know who else was in the meeting.
I can't hear you.
I just want to make sure you all know what is in the recommended budget. The vehicle, she did not seem to know this when she was in the meeting. The additional vehicle for the beer board is in the recommended budget.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so that's good.
It is
Done
already
already.
in there, as well as the scanner.
Okay.
Those things are already in the budget. It's just the first item for the additional position that's left.
So our vice chair's already fixed this.
Yes, very
Thank you.
efficient.
Thank you.
Way to good job.
Thank you, Councilman Burton.
Done.
Trying to do this for 12 years.
All right.
Good.
Yes, Councilman
This is in
Davis.
relation to the beer board. The inspector that's been there for a while, last time, Mr. Darby, will he be interviewing for the new chief beer police boss? Or the new position there?
Somebody will interview for that.
Okay.
I'm the director of finance.
But she's got to allocate the funds.
Don't nominate me.
Any further discussion on the beer board? And then, I think this is probably, yes, Councilman Hastings?
Now, how does that change? I know I have Talia here, but I just wanted to say it out. How does that change with the characteristics of the beer board when they have less responsibility? I know it does more than just approve beer in stores, because we're doing a lot of that stuff ourselves now. So how does that affect that? And if it does affect it, if they're doing less work, should we pay them more monies? That type of thing. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't know the answer to that question, so I was trying to figure that out, because right now my phone blows up constantly with trying to get beer approvals, and when we give that out now, it's no longer going approving for them to have beer in stores, in restaurants, and all of that stuff.
Okay.
It might be a District 2 issue.
So there's the question, okay, for Rosie to ask and get back to us.
Rosie will ask that.
Okay, all right. Human Relations, Councilman Sugar, this is a double entry?
It looks like the same thing, but let me just ask a quick question, and it's fine either way. There's a couple things I put on the list that didn't make it, and one of them has to do with codes, and I see all the codes coming up. Do you want me to insert, or just wait until we get to the end?
Insert.
Insert.
Same with me, same with me.
Well,
Yeah, this is
when we get to that
additional.
topic.
No, it's the same one, I think.
This is the same one, so
Okay.
that one goes out.
Okay, so
But,
it's the same.
all right.
I think some of us had some other stuff. I know Councilman Mendes had some stuff, but we're getting ready to talk about codes, and I've got one.
Okay.
Should I
All right.
insert it in here, or what?
No, well, let's just have a big old-fashioned codes discussion. A lot of council people have strong views. Maybe not everything is counted specifically.
Would you like, how about if I put it at the end of this list, and I'll just go behind everybody?
Okay.
Is that okay?
That would be great to have Councilman. So if we're doing this in the order of this, Council Lady Vercher, additional specialized personnel move 4 to 6 to property standards.
Yeah, so I think, you know, in looking at the wish list requests, myself, Council Lady Johnson, Council Lady Weiner, Council Lady Henderson, and Councilman Syracuse, we all agree. Are you, Councilman, you on here too?
Yes.
Okay, Councilman Glover, don't want to leave him out.
No, we'll leave him out.
Lord.
Council Lady Berger.
He's sensitive today.
Council Lady Berger, I will say mine was actually supposed to be zoning examiners, not inspectors.
Oh, zoning examiners, not inspectors. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
so
Okay.
just
Wow.
Okay.
But with that said, all of us recognize that we feel that department needs additional people beyond what was already recommended. And how we get there is really what we really want to discuss, because we know we want to give them more personnel to help our respective neighborhoods. Do we want, and I think I sent, I don't know if you got it, an adjustment to my request where they could hire part-time. We had discussed that because they do need a presence evening and weekends. So I think more importantly, we need to discuss what that makeup looks like for the additional personnel that we want to allocate the funding for codes that's beyond what's already been in the recommended budget. Councilman Glover.
Okay, so it's $828,000, I think is what Mr. Cobb gave us. $828,000 and some change. This is another one that I would like for the department to come back in, and let's make sure we understand exactly where they went, because if I remember the numbers correctly, they generated somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million in fees and whatnot. So it's not like they're costing any money. I think we need to reinvest back into this arena, because this is some areas that I absolutely believe the city's having problems with. So on this one, I mean, where we find additional funding, I think we find it from right there where the source is. They're generating more than they're spending. And so I think the 828, I think if 828,000 approximately was what Director Cobb had requested, then let's just go back through, make sure we understand it, and I'm all in favor of this one.
Council Lady Allen.
Can I just clarify one thing about funding sources? It seems to me like when we say, what are we going to fund it from, we can't point to revenue and say we're going to, because the revenue's all been allocated already. So to fund things, what we're going to have to do is point to things that are currently funding that we're willing to unfund. And so.
And I don't have a problem with that. I'll be happy to do that.
So to say code should pay for it, we already spent code's money, so we can't point to that. We got to unfund something
Well,
else.
let me ask Talia a quick question on codes funding. Can we raise codes fees to pay for this in the next years?
If you raise codes fees to pay for this, you need to raise the fee. If you want budget improvement for this year, then the fees have to be effective this year.
Have to be effective this year, and that would
Otherwise,
be.
you're not balanced. You've got
And that
to
would
have the
be
revenue to cover it.
Okay. All right.
So I'm going to defer, and then I want to go next.
Vice Mayor.
I have a couple questions. So I was not at the codes hearing, but it's my understanding that the codes director said that he couldn't live with the budget that the mayor presented. Is that right? Correct. Did he ask for these improvements in his request to the mayor?
I've got the request from codes in front of me. The only item that was not funded, he had a specific request for an increase in trade inspectors, and that was for 10 positions at $669,000. And we funded one of those, which was the urban forester.
So
Which was for 70.
he did make some requests, but those were not funded.
Yes.
And is he asking for the things that were not funded? Or is he asking for something else?
I've not done a side-by-side comparison to the line items.
Pretty unprecedented in my experience here for a department head to say that they weren't satisfied with the mayor's budget. I guess what I would encourage the council to consider in this respect is that if I would be very cautious about funding a request from a department head without a clear understanding that it was going to resolve the problem that the council had identified as being something they wanted to fund. So perhaps, I know this is probably an issue that y'all confront more than any other issue, property standards especially. So I would want to have a very clear understanding from the department head that any additional funding was actually going to be used to address the problem and be used in such a way that you were happy about it before I funded it. So there might be a way to reserve money for additional funding for a codes director based upon some sort of plan or plan of implementation for how that money would be spent instead of sending it without any strings attached. So, I would just want to have some strings attached to that money just because it seems like there's some confusion about there's some confusion about how that department should or would be run. So.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Council Lady Weiner.
So I'd like to try to shed a little bit of light on this because Councilmember Roberts and I did some digging into what goes on over there. And if you show up there at 7:30 in the morning, chances are you're not going to be seen till 3:15, 3:30 in the afternoon. They are not able to answer their phones if people call in. They borrowed an employee from Water Services. That employee that was answering the phones is now going back to water. They had an employee who was helping on the online and at the front desk. That too was a Water Services employee who is going back to Water Services. We have apparently, my understanding and hers is that there are 2 employees that are zoning examiners who are getting ready to retire. I don't know what their retirement date is. I don't know that they've even announced it, but they're ready to roll off. It takes roughly 6 months to hire and train, especially train, a new zoning examiner because of our zoning laws being so prolific. And so my suggestion would be to call Bill Herbert in here because that's his bailiwick, and let's let him and he and Terry Cobb speak to us about the real on-the-ground issues to clarify what I've just shared that she and I dug up when we investigated this.
So your proposal is to have them back maybe next Thursday?
Absolutely.
I think this just strictly strengthens what the vice mayor said. We bring them back in, we ask the questions, we get clarification on it, and let them walk us back through the numbers again.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think that's the right thing to do.
I know Council Lady Allen has had her hand
Yeah,
up.
I just was going to clarify real quickly. When we had the audit done, all the focus was on property standards, which is going out and finding codes violations that are out in the field from things that are already built. And he got all that funded. What nobody was paying attention to until Councilmembers Weiner Roberts did their study was the zoning examiners, which is the front end piece of it, which is when somebody wants to build something. And that's what he needs these 9 people for. So we weren't paying attention to that, and he got funded what we wanted, which was the property standards, enforcing that part. And so now he's come back with that other piece. I just want to make sure that's
Council Lady
clear.
Johnson, I know you had your hand up.
Yes, I'm on the same page. I agree with Council Lady Weiner and Council Lady Allen because codes department clearly need a zoning examiner. For whatever the reason, Director Cobb's proposal did not include those zoning examiner, just the property standards people. So I strongly encourage to include zoning examiner as well as asking Director and Bill Harvard of what's going on and what exactly needed for the next year's budget.
Okay. So, yes, Councilman Hastings?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, listening to the Vice Mayor, I think that is very, very important for all of us to look at because we know we do have issues. It's not only with Codes Department, but also planning, to where the wait time is a long time. But we have to make sure that each department is doing what they need to do because we have, especially out in the field, to where there are code violations and other things that are going on. Now, I know it was said by Councilman here about us regurgitating, basically getting more out of the fines or whatever that they're putting out there. But we also have a problem with people basically doing the job that we set out for them to do. So that is such an important thing. Before we do anything with that, we have to make sure that it is defined and monies are going to the proper place and they're doing exactly what we say. All right?
Okay. Councilman Mendez and then Kathleen.
I just wanted to make sure, following up the Vice Mayor's point from the Finance Director, there is a way for us to take some pile of money and say, you can have access to this once you hire this specific position?
You can have, yes, you could absolutely. The council can set those expectations on the front end through reserves, yes.
And if we don't say it specifically, then realistically...
Then there's really no lack of, there's a lack of accountability there.
Okay. And realistically, a department head could shift their resources around to different things?
They could.
Okay, thank you.
As chair of personnel, there are some of y'all that are here on my personnel committee that I've seen. We had department heads in front of us. We've tried to put a questionnaire together. Administrative people told us to look in the budget for the answers. We are going to be putting that back out soon, hopefully in the next week or two when I have some time to finalize it. We had Director Cobb in front of us along with other department heads, and he said to us, Kevin, remind me, when was this, maybe 2-3 months ago, that we had Director Cobb in front of us, in front of the personnel committee?
I remember being there, but he was there. I don't remember the body being in the room.
Anyway, clearly picked someone else from the committee down here. This was something that he brought up then, was that not only did he have vacancies that he needed to fill, and I think he's been working on that, is that zoning administrators, which my name is not on here for that, but I did turn it in. Those are the things that we needed to be filling and putting in. And so I definitely agree we need the nights and weekends. We have a lot of issues in codes, but I do feel like the zoning administration, the checking the codes, rechecking the plans, all that kind of stuff, that's almost, in my district at least, just as important as the property standards to get out there and check the tall grass. So I implore y'all to really look at the zoning administrators as a desperate need immediately.
Councilman?
Mr. Jameson, let me ask you, other than the school board, do we have the authority, I want to expand upon what Councilman Mendez was talking about. Do we have the authority to say, all right, we're going to allocate the $828,000, but it has to be utilized for this, where it, not necessarily line item, but do we have that authority?
The charter assigns the obligation to the directors to run their departments and reallocate.
That's what I thought.
And do the reserves.
Okay, so if we set it up, let's go back to the election commission, what we did to them 2 years ago, where we said, all right, we're going to put this amount of money over in a special fund. Can we do it basically the same way? I mean, we're talking about reserves, but how exactly do we identify it? How exactly do we approach it? And how exactly do we execute that?
So the council will decide to do meetings like this the next week that they want X number of FTEs allocated to a specific position, and then that FTE will be that number will be calculated, the salary and fringe benefits will be calculated. There's your figure. There's a condition upon which it's reserved, and then the director hires those individuals and money are out.
So then, Chair, this is the question I think, Rosie, that the $828,000 number, the exact number of positions, is that with benefits? What exactly is that? And come back and explain to us exactly what that will accomplish. And then, Mr. Jameson, if we could, if in fact we find the money in the budget to do this, how do we put it into the substitute budget to make it happen? I just want to make sure we follow the path all the way down the road.
All right, but I'm hearing a big consensus to have Mr. Herbert and Mr. Cobb here next week. I know we all look forward to that. Urban Forester, Councilman Sledge.
My understanding is that's already funded.
Yeah, it's already
Funded?
funded.
Only
one of them is. Yeah,
Only one?
Since-
I think there's been a question about having two.
I don't necessarily think, from the advocacy community standpoint, that it needs to be maybe someone at the level of the urban forester at that pay. That it might be, looking at just growing that team comparatively to other cities and peer cities, and that we did have two folks in that role prior, but as we've grown, as we're losing more trees become more of an issue. So I think the advocacy community was hoping, very appreciative for the one more, but they were hoping that they could get a little more.
For one more?
Yes.
For an additional urban forester. Okay, and I'm sorry, Council Lady, you're saying the urban forester in the sense that there's one head and one assistant?
Well, right, and I think that is somewhat still kind of in question. That conversation's ongoing about what that position will look like. I mean, currently, that gentleman is one lone person in codes under that umbrella, working with SP plans and zoning plans and commercial things. And in other cities, it doesn't really work that way. And so, I think there's a bit of a question of how that should be structured. So I concur that we need more staff focused on trees and tree retention, but at present, I don't think, and this kind of points to speaking to Director Cobb, the way it's structured right now, I don't think is particularly effective. So given the current structure, I'm not sure if it would work to have 3 people, but I think we're maybe evolving to approach urban forestry differently. So
part of next week's discussion too. Councilman Davis?
I'm all for raising or helping get another urban forester, but while looking at that, and Talia, this is already funded, please excuse me, but we have the deputy directors of departments that are still on their close to entry level pay. Yeah. And when we need to raise salaries of crossing guards and other folks, I mean, I live from East Nashville. We need more urban forestry help, but there's a few other things. We're going to raise that, which I'm for. There's some other positions that we need to raise because the gentleman, really helpful in Brenda Wynn's office with the glasses, really nice gentleman who's been there for the last 20 years, is still at a level 2 salary when he's a level 4 person in the office. And I can't think of his name. I think he's like 3rd in command, and he's at like 55,000. He's in Brenda Wynn's office, the clerk's office.
Well, I mean, what is the output of the people that's
The
doing
clerk's
work?
office will.
Well, I just want to know what skills and the output. I don't think job salary should be based upon tenure. It should be based on
But the skills and
responsibility and
outfit,
output.
though, It's
So should I make $100,000 just because I've been there 20 years opening the door? No, I think we need to align pay with the responsibilities. And so I would
I
ask that we
agree.
look
He
at the
should be making $100,000
responsibilities.
then. He should be making $100,000 then.
Well,
Okay.
I would think that.
Councilman Hastings. Councilman Hastings.
I just wanted to say with the priorities, I know that forestry is very important to us, but I don't know if I was putting 1 to 10, if that would be even in my top 10.
Okay, we're not voting today.
No,
We're discussing
I'm just
and getting ready
saying
for everybody to
with
make their
that, just
decision.
putting that out.
And we're all saying the same thing, so to keep the moving
Yes, let's
along,
go.
we're
Council
gonna
Lady
have
Henderson.
Herbert and Director Cobb.
Appreciate that. And if I could just make the point, I think it's not necessarily an additional urban forester, but it could be someone in urban forestry to go out and inspect to make sure that mature trees are attained, and so that could be at a lower entry level, inspector salary.
Okay, I know Councilman Schulman asked to be re-included at the heel of the coach discussion.
At the end of the coach discussion. So this is a little different. I have a bill floating right now. It's on second consideration. It'll come up next Tuesday. I'm calling it now the Neighborhood Cleanup Incentive Program. I should have named it after Council Lady Berkshire because it comes out of her district. Yeah, you're welcome. We were driving around looking at stuff, and one of her constituents was talking about all the codes violations that were in the neighborhoods. And I think a lot of times you'll get calls, district council members get calls and say, I think there's a codes violation, but don't tell them that I did it, would you call? And so this is a neighborhood idea to get the neighborhood involved in cleaning up neighborhoods by bringing everybody together. You ask codes to come out, somebody from codes takes a walk around, everybody knows that it's like there's no violations the first time, but they point out all the different codes violations in the neighborhood. And then the neighborhood together as a group cleans it up. Codes comes back and says, you did it, you get a clean bill of health, you're a codes-free neighborhood, and there's incentive money tied to it. So I put in like $5,000. I put in like a $5,000 per neighborhood. I actually put in $25,000 for each of the 35 councilmatic districts. Not that they'll all be used, but in certain situations it could all be used. The program is not necessarily defined. I think the council would have a chance to kind of define what that would be. It would be run through the codes department, would actually hopefully save the codes department a lot of money because they're not coming and looking at individual code violations. They're coming to a neighborhood and trying to get the whole thing cleaned up.
Right, so
anyway, that's
about
what it is.
a bill coming up on Tuesday.
Yeah, and the overall cost, two last things, Mr. Chairman. $875,000, if you take $25,000, multiply by the 35, that's what you get. I will tell you that I did talk to the finance department. They didn't have money in the budget last year, and they don't have any money in it for this year. And Terry Cobb came to that meeting and said that it would cost approximately $1 million to do this program for codes. So $875,000 of incentive money for your neighborhoods to actually beautify it. But he said that he was going to have to hire 6 more people, get more vehicles and administrative staff, and it was going to cost him about $1 million to actually implement the program. So I think it's fair to say that he said it was going to cost a lot more money.
A quick question for you, Councilman. That number, you put it in at $25,000. That could be $10,000 also. But it's per district.
It could be a pilot program. It's what you all want to do. If you want to do it, all I know is that it gives you a chance to actually start putting some money back into some of those neighborhoods.
Well, if there's no further discussion about codes, because we're having Mr. Herbert and Mr. Cobb back next week, and are going to have a lot more discussion about codes.
Can I just ask one point of clarification? Most of these talk about moving things to property standards, and it seems to me like we got the positions in property standards. We want to move them to zoning administration. Is that what people were thinking or not?
I guess what I was thinking is like there's 8 FTEs in codes, and nobody's saying we don't want the property standards, but or property inspectors, but if there's 5 of those and you need zoning examiners and that hasn't been addressed, should it be 4 property inspectors, 1 zoning examiner?
That's what I said in the beginning. We need to come up with how we want that mixture to be.
Okay, right.
Okay, for next week's work. Councilman Schulman has an Office of Family Safety request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this goes back to last year, and I think Talia can probably help me with this. Last year, Actually, if you pull up your administrative at a glance, so if you look at, this would be page 8, domestic violence, YWCA, it's like about the 9th one from the top. They got $278,700 in their budget from last year. Obviously, domestic violence is one of those big items that people seem to be concerned about. What happened was when we got to the Office of Family Safety, we actually have a decreased amount of money that's coming to domestic violence. It actually went from $278,700 to $250,000. And the question was, why are we decreasing the amount if that's something we're really worried about? And so what I did was simply put in an additional $50,000 so they could actually get back to even a little higher than they were last year.
Okay. All right, Councilman Davis.
In support, what I do ask though, is there a way for them to use that money to help target other communities? Like there's lots of other good domestic violence programs, and domestic violence period is bad, but I know in the Sudanese community and in Hispanic communities and in African American communities, sometimes, I don't know if it's awareness, or they may not know that those services are available with the YWCA, or there may be like the Real Moms Network of Northeast Nashville, Kim Tucker's group. They do a lot of, domestic violence outreach in the Black and Hispanic neighborhoods. And the Mommy Up program, there's a lot of good ones out there that are, because, of course, I'm not speaking of other neighborhoods, but some of those issues, just because they may not have access to what's going on in the YMCA, but maybe they can reach out to those other neighborhoods with that additional money.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
I'm not certain that we need to have her back in to talk to us, but I want to echo what Councilman Schulman is talking about. I think it's important that we understand, did we rob Peter to pay Paul in this scenario? And what are they actually, are we giving them less than what they had? And I know, Talia, there's some grant questions on this, and there's other questions that went unanswered. How do we get that answered?
We sent around a response to all of the council questions, and you should have gotten an email from Lionel Matthews as to how we are going to shift them from community enhancement funds, where this funding came through, to this new community partnership fund. And the only thing I think that I would add to this discussion for the why is that the specific appropriation to the Y that was allocated was for shelter.
Shelter.
So if you just think about that in the context of other nonprofits that may provide DV services, do they provide shelter? So that was the focus of that allocation.
Okay, well, let me be a little more specific on the way I say what I'm saying. This is not a full-time job for us. And while I appreciate we get emails and things, we have lives that we do throughout the week. I did not see it. I'm not saying it didn't come out, but I did not see it. But specifically, did we address, and are they going to get less money than they got? And if they are getting less money than they got, how do we make sure that does not happen?
I will summarize for you the email that went out to council, just for the benefit of everybody here. Last year there was a little over $2 million that was allocated for the Community Enhancement Fund. In this year's budget, you will see a line item for $1 million for the Community Partnerships Fund.
Okay.
The decision was made that because that was a smaller allocation, that those nonprofits that received money in FY17 would have an opportunity to get at least 60% of the funding that they received in FY17, because this would be a transition year for nonprofits, and they wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to prepare for the transition to the new Community Partnerships Fund.
So roughly, if they're only getting 60%, roughly 100,000 less then?
And out of that, originally I had said it was $2 million for FY17. There were 2 items that were previously funded out of that Community Enhancement Fund dollars that the mayor felt were important enough to continue services without having that, because of that transition. So we tried to get as close to their original funding as we could. So you will see what we call a direct appropriation for the Y, which was put in Family Safety's budget. And you will also see a new direct appropriation that doesn't have to go through CEF for Second Harvest. Okay, so if you look in your list, you'll see a specific amount in there for Second Harvest. And those two were previously funded through CEF. So those are, you could consider that in addition to the $1 million that was in the Community Partnerships Fund. And I think that kind of summarizes the email that, if anybody here remembers it, or is there anything else that I missed that would be relevant to this conversation?
I just that no additional nonprofit, there's no application process.
There's no application for this year, just because we're considering that to be the transition year.
Well, I have a quick question. The transition into this policy is something, it is administration-driven change in policy. There wasn't an ordinance or resolution about
No,
this.
CEF was never it was a kind of an ad hoc committee, and many of you who you served on the committee before, Budget and Finance Chair generally has a seat at the table.
Okay.
To walk through that process in here.
Okay.
Is there anybody else in here that had that honor? Probably only you.
Okay. Councilman Shulman.
I mean, the only thing I'd point out, and Second Harvest is important too, but of those two, Second Harvest got double the amount.
Right.
And domestic violence, we decreased. And I worry about domestic violence. I mean, obviously it's an important thing. I don't understand all the discussions about shelter and all the other stuff, but obviously it's now in Office of Family Safety, $250,000 to increase domestic violence victim services. I would say to Councilman Davis, talk to her. If we get money in, if you want to put additional money in or whatever, obviously this is one of those things that Ms. Lance is very concerned about, and so are we. I hate to decrease funding, but I also understand that there are other groups that may be able to help them, and I would encourage you to have that conversation.
Councilman Glover.
Councilman Mendez, I want to go back and try and connect the dots here, if we may. With regards to the state courts, one of the first items we spoke about, I'm not saying this is a part of that money, but I'm saying it's all a part of the overall picture. Am I missing something, or am I connecting the dots and looking at this in the right way, or am I not looking at it the right way?
With the issue about how these things are funded, the switch in policy. We're talking about the domestic violence. I mean, there's a higher number of orders of protection that need to be dealt with than there have been in the past.
Okay.
There's no doubt about that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. That being said, important item, important people to decide what to do. Public Works, Councilman Pridemore.
Initially, this was basically a discussion with Public Works along with their garbage, the roving garbage truck that was funded. This is something that I've kind of addressed to them due to the problems we're having with high weeds around the connector streets. You know, maybe they connect to a state highway or a state roadway, especially ones that have guardrails, because it seems we're having to make special requests to get that done through Public Works or Sheriff's Office. But once the garbage roving truck was actually approved and funded, I kind of made that request to them, that what would be the cost, and that we need to have it funded and also manned to where it would be effective. And I mean, just two people. My suggestion was to go around the districts and randomly, or through the request of the council members, and clean
Okay.
up those particular intersections. And they thought it was something that was very valuable, and naturally, I've run past several council members and they agree with it.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion on this Public Works item? Okay. We'll turn the page to Nashville Fire Department. I appreciate everybody moving. Council Lady Murphy, 14 additional fire suppression positions.
So as we heard in the budget hearing, Chief White talked about that he needed more additional fire suppression. We also in the Personnel Committee had Chief White, when he was appointed as the fire chief, come and speak to us. He spoke about needing more fire suppression. We had been on a hiring freeze for many years prior to this administration, and they did just hire a new class of recruits, but that fire suppression level of employees is much further down than I guess expected, because we've moved up from within, we've promoted within, and so that leaves kind of gaps below. And one thing that really concerns me is that we are not hitting our national standard of running basically 4 employees per equipment, and so when we are not running that full 4 staffing, we don't have the 2 in, 2 out policy in place. We're having higher costs on injured on the job and workers' comp fees, which also will lead to higher early retirements and things like that. And I'm sure y'all all got the notice that we just had an employee pass away from an injury that was sustained on the job and the complications with the surgery thereof. And so we, even with these 14, I don't think that hits the number that gets us doing 2 in, 2 out, but we're going to be able to lower some of our overtime and give them the rest that they need to recuperate and get back to work. So fire suppression is where I've asked for.
Thank you. Councilman?
I'm going to jump on that one because I agree. I think we every year we talk about this, but we never get there. And if in fact public safety is one of the key things we do in the city, then we need to make sure we have our priorities where our priorities need to be.
Okay.
So I'm supportive of this one.
Okay. Any other discussion on Council Lady Murphy's suggestions? Okay. Councilman Leonardo's Fire Prevention Inspector's Office, 3 additional employees. Councilman.
Thank you. I believe in the mayor's budget, during the budget hearings, they had promised, when I say fire prevention, it's the fire inspector's office. She had promised 6 full-time employees, and then when the budget came out, it was 3. Right now, there's 20 employees. We don't even have a fire marshal in Davidson County, and the charter requires a fire marshal. We haven't had that in 5 years, so I've got a resolution coming to appoint the woman who's been there the longest, who happens to be in my district, Ms. Bartley. But as far as what these guys do, not only do they inspect new buildings, but they have to do the short-term rentals. And then, like last night at the Predators things, it was all hands on deck. So they had to have everybody working overtime. And the other thing is that if you have an event outside, which I wasn't aware of, but if you have an event outside and there's so many people, then you have to have so many people from the fire marshal's office. So right now, with the way the city's growing, they have all those responsibilities, even from coming into the Metro Council chambers. We saw them in there when we were busy one night. So they're asking for 3 additional full-time employees, which would move them up to 23. But right now, they're completely understaffed, working 80-hour weeks, because there's just not enough staff in that department.
Council Lady Waiter.
What's the cost?
The cost is, it's in the budget, and I don't have it in front of me, but they have 3 full-time.
165.
So I guess obviously double
165.
If you look at probably, I don't know what the starting would be, but I would say 165 is probably in the
And maybe we'll ask the question for 3 to confirm that number and recirculate that.
Chair, let me add to that if I might. I know from working with these guys through the Bellevue Picnic every year for we're in our 41st year now. They are critically important to events, to a myriad of things, and trying to get these guys out in a timely manner, no fault of their own.
Right.
It's a staffing problem, so I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, and the other thing is that right now, the permit fees have not been raised in 14 years. So right now, it's $25 to get them to come out, but yet they get $30 an hour, time and a half, and they got to have 2 or 3 of them. So I've got legislation coming to obviously raise those fees.
And Talia wants to speak. She had her hand up.
I have a number for you.
Okay.
Okay. They requested 6 positions, and the mayor recommended 3.
So the number to get 3 more would be 262,600.
They don't start at start pay then.
262,600.
The number to get to 6.
The number to get to 6, the mayor recommended.
You had three additional is 262.
So to get the other 3 is 262,600.
So they're not starting at a smaller pay.
Okay.
Okay.
Be surprised.
All right, yeah, Councilman Eager.
My understanding is they short an arsonist investigator too.
They haven't had that for years, right?
Right. Nor a fire marshal, we're in violation of the law.
Did we switch that over to TBI? Am I getting that confused? Okay.
I think Larry's right. So.
Yeah, we're
It
short
is
an
on the fire
arsonist.
marshals?
We are short an arsonist investigation.
Okay.
Can we ask them
Chair, we need clarity because we have language being thrown around that we're violating laws and
Yeah.
this is being recorded. So
We need
I
clarity.
want us to make sure that
Well-
we have clarity as it relates to
Well, let's
how we operate
get
as a government.
clarity for the next meeting about what we are missing.
And what we're violating.
And we
what
have
we are
legal
violating.
counsel here. I didn't know if he wanted to chime in. Okay.
I mean, we have the fire marshals.
We don't have an appointed fire marshal.
We don't have a appointed fire marshal.
Yeah.
All right, trying to get clarification. Councilman
And
Glover?
then, Councilman Leonardo, what latitude do we have with regards to raising fees on this? I mean, is there state statutes that won't allow us to take it to a certain level, or can we, I mean?
No, it's my understanding that it's a metropolitan code that would allow us, for these special event permits,
Okay.
that we could raise the fees.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you. We'll try to get clarification. Great item going on. Health Department, school nurses, Council Lady Weiner, Councilman Schulman, Councilman Fledge, in particular on this, $981,000. Council Lady Weiner.
You want to go first? You want me to go?
No, you go first.
So on your desks, you'll see a sheet that I passed around, and it starts with according to Susan Hassmiller. I pulled some statistics on the function of school nurses, the value of school nurses, and I'm not going to sit here and read it to you. I think it goes without saying that our students need to be in school focusing on learning, and when there are issues that can be managed, and either the child be sent back to class or, importantly, the child be farmed out for the appropriate level of care, and they catch those things early, that just speaks volumes to the quality of health care that we offer our children. And so I can't speak highly enough about how important this is. I was disappointed that the school system chose to pull that out of the budget. And so I would suggest, just in terms of putting governance, if you will, where it should be, these are school nurses, they should be managed by our health department. So I would recommend that this be funded through the health department, and the amount of money that is required to cover it for this year, because it's, I believe, Talia, a 3-year allocation of $981,000.
That's, they would need an incremental, next year would need to be double that.
Right.
1.6.
Okay, so it's,
Yeah.
so for this year, it'd be 981 to get it moving.
Yes.
And so that is on your desk, and I just don't see the point in reading this to
All
you.
right, thank you. Any other discussion? Councilman Davis?
I agree, Councilor Weiner, but just, and we talked to the health department directly, I'd like to focus to start when it rolls out to be addressing those schools most at risk in North and South Nashville, where a school nurse, depending on the area, you know, 'cause that won't cover a nurse for every school, right?
No, and Rosa, if we can find out from the health department, because they've been working with metro schools on this, if we can get verification from them of the number of school nurses there are in the schools and what schools they would target and in what order of priority they would give them, I think that would help answer your question.
Okay.
Yeah, the number of nurses.
It should be 1 to 75 students.
Or 750. 750. After the 3-year rollout. Right, okay. All right. Any further discussion? Metro Planning, Council Lady Murphy.
So I'm going to refer back to my personnel committee that Kevin has attended, and when we had Director Sloan into our office to discuss some of the issues why he has turnover rate, besides the fact of us stealing one of his staff members to be our own. And he and I've had some additional talks, and a couple of things have been identified of why we have turnover in the planning department. And one of them is that, you know, a lot of young planners, good planners, will come into that department. They learn the ropes, and then they're lured away by higher salaries in the private sector, which is totally understandable. I mean, we do have a lot of good planners coming through there. So when discussing how to keep and retain employees, something that has come up is a lot of our planning staff have to do basically like y'all attorneys, continuing education. And we are not paying for their continuing education to keep their licenses. We pay for that in other departments. I believe we pay for it in the legal department and things like that. But we're not paying for it in the planning department. And so I think that a lot of us know we have planners that we like and we have planners that maybe we don't like, but we build those relationships and we start to understand each other. And I think we all have learned a lot from them, and seeing that turnover is not good for us, and it's not good for our neighbors and our constituents. And so if we can do something that is only $30,000 to help retain our employees that we have already invested in, I think this is a low-hanging fruit that should be an easy get.
Councilman Lady Berger?
I think that will retain those employees short term, but really there's some other things systemic that's going on within that department that needs to be addressed. One of my questions is, and I don't know, you probably have more conversations with them being the chair personnel. How are they capturing that information? Do they do exit interviews? I know the answer for one particular former employee. They were basically told adios.
So I can't speak to that, but it's something that I'm willing to have that discussion with the department head and try to look at that more.
Yeah, I think we need to explore why they're leaving, because throwing money at it may not
you're
even
right.
be
Like, this is why I said to Director Sloan, is it that we are not offering competitive salaries? Is it that we are not, is it an issue that we now have to have 10 years to invest in our retirement system rather than 5? Because, is it, those type of things. And one thing, and basically this was a low-hanging fruit that could be achievable.
Council Lady Dowell.
I would agree with Council Lady Berger on the planning. I think it's important for us to live out. We need to know why people are leaving. I don't think $30,000 is why people are leaving. I think it's the culture, the amount of work there, and I think those types of things. Maybe we need to have some type of consultant to look at the organization of the planning department and assess the leadership and all the way down to determine if that has any impact on people leaving. Some of the conversation I had nothing to do with the workflow. It had more to do with the leadership and so forth. So I don't think it's
and I'm definitely not
morale in the department and things like that.
Councilman Hastings.
I just wanted to chime in a little bit with that. One of the things that they did just receive is a nice increase on their pay. So we got to look at waiving that out, because I don't necessarily think right now every one of them did not receive an increase on their pay. And I was trying to think of the name. Most of the police officers are up under that, to where you can't be fired. You had to go up under certain things. What is that called?
Civil service?
Civil service, yeah. Civil service employees did not receive the same increase, but those guys that work in the planning department received a hefty increase in their budget.
I thought they were contract employees. Isn't planning contract?
Almost everybody in the planning department has a contract, so I'm not familiar with what.
Yeah.
with
So
the
they're not
issue.
civil service.
Councilman Davis.
No. There are some that are there that work in the. There are some that are part of the civil
All
service.
right, Councilman Davis.
I'm down their office probably 3 days a week for the last 6 years. Besides Council Lady Allen, it's a few others, and they definitely everybody's right. They need the additional funding for their training because it's kind of unfair that we're putting all that pressure on them and they're working till midnight. Some nights I've gotten calls from Carrie at 6 o'clock on a Saturday. They're down there working, trying to get through these agendas. And so if we can help them with their continual education, I don't care if we raise each fee another $5 to cover this $20,000. But they need that, but also, you know, if we can raise their contracts, we need to increase the fee another $200 to get the money for them and to retain people.
Yeah, we're not saying we're not gonna support it, we're just saying in addition to this, we need to get
I think we'll waste the money.
Pardon me, everyone.
Councilman Withers.
Pardon my lateness in arriving following work, but I'm glad that I got here when I did. I serve as the vice chair of personnel with Council Member Murphy, and we have had a discussion about this very topic with Mr. Sloan in our committee, as well as during the operating budget hearing. That was a question I asked of Director Sloan of why we had turnover and what might be more attractive to retain employees, and that was something that Director Sloan advised. I think that anytime that we, as a metro government or as an employer, invest in our employees, that's a good thing. If that helps not only to retain employees, but to increase the quality of the services that they provide to our constituents. If we can find a way perhaps to fund that through additional fees, as Councilmember Scott Davis suggested, I think that's great. But I do want to comment that personnel or some of those other personality matters, we can conduct that type of a survey separately and independently from a benefits piece. So I'm not saying either or, but I would stand in support of continuing to invest.
I saw Council Lady Henderson had her hand raised.
I was just speaking in support of that, and I think it also speaks to Council Lady Dow and Berkshire's issues around morale. I mean, when we have folks that have gone through professional graduate training and come and are, you know, working in the civic space instead of in the private space, maybe they are paid a little less, but, you know, they have a heart for our city. For them to then have to write a check for their $1,000 of continuing ed, I just think it works for the morale piece too.
Thank you, Council Lady. Did you want to finish up, Councilman Davis?
I'll finish up. Because I was getting to the leadership part. I mean, you got Doug, you got Bob, you got Carrie. I know we all agree those are very top-notch directors and assistant directors for our departments. And I'm all for studies, but I think it's something we could do internally instead of farming, not about this study, but there's studies that we farmed out $200,000 or $100,000 in the past just to tell us we got a problem with something. Metro, I appreciate us being forward thinking, saying we have a problem with diversity, but then giving $200,000 just to tell us we have a problem with diversity, I'm not for. We know we need more women, we need more Hispanics, we need more African Americans.
Council Lady Winter.
So let's just, instead of farming out a study, we know what we need.
So this is a question. Given that the director of the department is appointed by the mayor's office, what actual input can we realistically offer? Can we put forth a request for an analysis of what's going on in that department?
I'll ask Rosie to make a note to ask Mr. Jameson, who has said his son's graduation. Okay, that next this specific question. Any further discussion on metro planning? Last word. Okay, let's go to Farmers Market. Council Lady Hurt, promotional advertising, $20,000 for the Farmers Market promotional advertising. This is, she will try to come and we'll have another session, so we certainly hope to hear from her on this later. The Hospital Authority, Council Lady Gilmore and Council Lady Hurt, electronic records system. Council Lady Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you. So, as everyone knows, I am the chair of the Health and the Hospitals Committee. And I think it was very informative when we recently had our budget, and they shared that they had beds that were older than 18 years old for starters. So I think a lot of times we look at the hospital authority and General Hospital, and we think it's the way that it's been ran, but it's actually, they don't have the proper resources that they need. So I shared the part about the hospital beds to share that the electronic records we found out was actually responsible for some of the billing. And for a time that we thought that it was just maybe incompetence or so, but it's like it's all connected. So they need the electronic records so that they can better evaluate what they're doing, and it fills that gap that's there. And also it helps them to be very efficient, which they're not efficient now with these electronic records that they have. And so it was very insightful what they had to offer. I think it's really needed for the hospital to run efficiently. I mean, it was tied to so many different pieces of the operation, this electronic records. And so the second piece is the police cameras. I wanted to explain the police cameras. Lately, there has been a lot of information that's been shared on police cameras, and if you really don't have the buy-in that you need, we're seeing across the United States, and I'll share an article or a news segment that was shared with me on NPR, where a lot of cities are getting sued even though they have the cameras, because if you don't have the buy-in from the chief or whoever's running the city, please let me finish.
Point of order. I'm no argument. Point of order.
Well, Council Lady Gilmore, we've our fault. We've not been talking about funding sources.
Oh, okay. I saw that the source was listed
I
there.
agree. You're accurate to the list, but
Okay.
we've been discussing spending priorities.
Okay,
but
I
we do
apologize.
want
I
to
was just trying
discuss
to-
sources.
Okay.
So
Today we're just talking about the
every word
okay,
that you
so
say is.
I'm glad you shared that with me then.
Is
Okay,
valued.
so then I will retract that.
For
I guess
that.
I mean being late, I missed that part. Okay. And then I just have 2 more points. The second point is that there are 750 employees at Metro General. They're all our constituents, and I think it's important that we provide for them an environment where they can really succeed. And I don't think that we have provided that for them. I think we've just given them enough to go along to get along. And also the university is tied to that. So we're talking about people's jobs, we're talking about health, which is something that we know that we have to do as a city. And I think we just need to hunker down and commit to it. And if not, just make it a place where you go get your teeth cleaned.
Okay.
All right.
There are 3 items here on the hospital authority of differing amounts of money. As I understand your item, Council Lady, it's to fulfill really the hospital authority's full request.
Yes.
And there's this second item from Council Lady Hurt to pay the low-cap fees in particular, which is a smaller amount, and a third item from Councilman Mendez to have a $5 million increased allocation. Perhaps we should discuss all 3 sort of together in terms of general hospital
And
funding.
then, can I just make one more point, and then I'll turn over to my colleague. The second point is that we did the restructuring, and I appreciate the mayor for that, for the governance. We have people that are very adept in what they're doing. I mean, so that we said that we would support them. They're saying that this is the amount that they need. We have persons that run hospitals, that lead nonprofits. I mean, they are the best at what they do. So I think we really need to get behind them at this point. We've done the first part, which was the restructuring. The second part is the money, and I think we really got to go with it at this point. It's do or die.
Okay, Councilman Mendez.
And so one clarification, the electronic record system, I sort of imagine to be capital, not operating. And there's other capital things like for air conditioning, farmers market. We're not talking about that today, right?
We are not.
When are we going to, just out of curiosity, when are we going to talk about that?
Well, next week.
All right.
And
Fair enough. So on the hospital authority, I've stuck $5 million in there, and I'm going to honor not talking about sources. It's a placekeeper. The number's a placekeeper. There's no way to talk about the number without having a conversation about the sources. For all the reasons that Council Lady Gilmore said, more is needed there, and I'm not sure what the right number is. It depends on our conversation with sources.
So in a way, if I can summarize, your proposal is to give them a significant amount of money and find as much as you can within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I wrote $5 million down because, frankly, anything less than that is not worth the effort.
Okay. All right, Councilman Davis.
Also, agreeing with Councilor Gilmore, Councilman Mendez, and several others in helping fund the hospital. But they really need all of this, and they need a little bit more because, I don't know what's going on. We all hear what's going on the federal level, and if more people are cut off of insurance because of the federal administration or for wherever the state or for whatever. When the 3 rural hospitals closed down near Davidson County, all those people went to general. So general's being burdened in additional to what they were needing before. But more people, if you go inside that parking garage or Meharry's, you'll see a lot of out-of-county talents, you know, in there. And so we do treat out-of-county people.
But they can't turn people.
They can't turn people away. And so when their hospitals close down, it's like, let's go to Nashville, go to the big city, and general cannot turn you, and they won't turn you away. And so what we have to do is remember that too. So the hospital wasn't funded properly before, but now it's having this increased burden on it too from outside forces not under our control.
Thank you.
So we got to remember.
So, Council Lady Weiner.
Thank you. I've got a couple of things. Thing number one regards my previous conversation about metro planning. When we ask that question, would you make sure that we cover our obligation under state law and the metro charter insofar as the authority of the planning director to manage the staff? I just think that clarification is important because I know they're reflected there. So that was thing number one. Thing number two, as far as the hospital is concerned, on June 8th, Dr. Webb, Dr. Hildreth, Don Alexander, and a host of other people from the administration of the hospital authority are going to Atlanta to look at Grady Hospital. Grady was in this boat a while back, and Grady was able to turn it around, and actually I believe Mr. Swope has information about that he'll share. And then additionally, I think that we can look at places like 4% money, and I'd like to wait to really investigate how we spend the money until we have the opportunity to hear back from them insofar as their trip to Grady and what their plans are moving forward. I also think it's important to potentially look at dividing out and looking at a supplemental down the road when we see how they have turned things around instead of just giving them all this money in one bucket. That's all I've got.
Councilman Swope.
My wife is one of the people that helped turn Grady Hospital around, and I can promise you right now it did not cost $25 million. It cost less than a fifth of that for electronic records, HIPAA compliant, a whole lot of yards. So I don't know where they come up with $25 million number, but that's insanity. Numbers should be more like 2.5 million, maybe 3.
And I may reach out to them too about the hospital authority, the consortium of hospitals, because I work for a healthcare system. They do support other hospitals like Metro General, and so there may be some opportunity to work through them, because Metro General is actually taking a lot of the patients that your Baptist, your HCA, those systems, Vanderbilt, I mean, no hospital hypothetically is supposed to turn down anyone.
None of them do.
So they don't necessarily have to go to General. They can go over to an HCA or Vanderbilt or what have you. But I know that they work together to try to help systems improve their network. So we need to talk.
Councilman Glover.
Talia and Mr. Riebling, is there any way that we can have an idea if we took the $35 million on this subsidy and we looked at slicing it up amongst other hospitals, i.e. Vanderbilt, whatever, is there a way that we can be more efficient with the dollars that we're using? And I'm not saying that's where we go, but I think we have to be honest with one another. I mean, we can't keep reaching in and pulling 10 million here and 15 million there. No. And so have we looked down that path, and have we tried to determine if there's a way that we can use our taxpayer dollars more efficiently?
Rich, do you want to jump in here? They've got to be willing to come to the table and have that discussion as well.
Okay.
You know, so
It's a two-way street.
No, that's fine. I'm just.
Okay.
Here.
Councilman Mendez.
That's complicated.
I think Davis has.
Sorry, Councilman Davis.
Right.
I get the concept from that, but until the other hospitals quit turning folk away, because people in all neighborhoods get turned away from those hospitals. We can't stop it. I know we can't stop it, but until there's other ways to do it, yes.
All right. Councilman Mendez.
So, to the point that Council Lady Gilmore made about governance, last year the mayor expanded and changed the way the governance worked. We approved different people to be on the board. I would, having attended a bunch of their board meetings and finance committee meetings, there has been a functioning board of the hospital authority, the way you want boards to function for 7, 8 months. And I think that, I know that strategic planning is on their mind, and I think that, I think in addition to the question that Councilman Glover asked of finance and the COO, I think that there needs to be some opportunity for the hospital authority, the new people on that board that have been there for a matter of months to do that. I believe that figuring out a strategy that is best for Nashville and all its citizens is on their agenda.
Okay. Good.
So it's a fair question.
Councilman Hastings.
Yes, I just wanted to implement, $25 million is a lot of money for a system, because I have a little information pertaining to hospital. I was an operations manager at one period of time in my life for medical clinics and all of that stuff, but for a hospital of that size, have some inside information that lives with me, all right? That a system like that could be a couple of $1 million, not 25 million. But overall, in the way that things have been run before, it's because of things have been taken out of context as far as a lot of the audits or whatever other companies coming in. But we can downsize that big time from where it is to have a independent system that will actually work for the hospital.
Okay.
So can I ask, is that what they provided to you, or is that just an arbitrary?
This is not an arbitrary number.
Yeah.
This came from the CFO who ran other hospitals in Nashville and ran Metro General. This is not an arbitrary number. It's a specific number from attending the budget meeting, and this is what they stated. And if Councilmember Mendez would like to add on to that.
I think what happened at the meeting is that the CFO turned to Dr. Webb and asked, and Dr. Webb provided the number. I don't think that was something we had asked him to be prepared to respond to, and I think it would be fair in follow-up questions to ask them to verify what they think that cost is.
I just wanted to say before you move, the CFO who's there, who just came back, she was there before with the hospital. So there's been a lot of move around with that system, and the system that they had before actually came out of Texas, and it was really good but very, very expensive for them, and that is a part of the take. But I wouldn't.
So
25 million is too much money.
Councilman Weiner.
So to that point, what happened, I think, was that Dr. Webb punted to a staff member who's responsible in that department, and I believe she was quoting a sole source.
It was Judith.
It was Judith, yeah. But then they punted to somebody in the audience, and I think that was a sole source. So my question to the hospital authority would be, who have you, or how many different companies have you looked at to source this, and what different pricing are you getting, and what does that include?
Okay. Yeah. We will follow up with these questions. We're not voting. We're having a discussion to air out the issues that are here. If there's no further discussion on the hospital, why don't we move on to the council office? Appreciate everybody's time here, and that's Council Lady Weiner's proposal for the council office.
Near and dear to our hearts is the council office and what it does for us on a daily basis. To that end, there's a letter on your desk. It says all. And I'm not going to reread it. In a nutshell, it references two positions. One is an IT business analyst. Another one is a financial analyst. Let's talk about IT first. We've got our renovated Nashville.gov, renovated hub, or the Hub Nashville. We have the virtual office for us, which is our new dashboard that's about ready to come online, believe it or not. We have the community enhanced engagement that Councilmember Schulman, Councilmember Hurt, Councilmember Rosenberg and I are working on, and that's going to incorporate change.org and a myriad of other online and digital platforms. We've got so many things that we can do to engage with our constituents in a more robust manner and streamline what we do and reduce some of our search time, that if we have somebody that can get ahead of this, so we don't have to keep going to Keith Durbin going, can you spare us somebody? Because clearly he doesn't have and he's told us, because we met with him at length, Mike and Rosie and I did, and he was very clear to state that we would be best suited to have a person who is dedicated to what our specific needs are, that'll help us to move forward in all the different areas that we want to move forward. Let me flip the point to the financial analyst, and we know that our dear Mike Curl has decided that he's going to throw in the towel and hang it up at the end of our term because he can't believe that he's going to have to be here when we're gone. And so, having said all that, did I do that well, Mike? Having said all that, we need somebody that can seamlessly take on his role, plus a host of other roles. And if you'll look at paragraph number 5, I've stipulated all the things that Mike and Rosie gave us as to what those duties would require. And a lot of those are things that Mike doesn't do now, and that could really enhance our ability to do our jobs faster, better, more efficiently, and to dig deeper into the things that we like to dig deeper into. And so for that reason, those 2 positions are on here. The one thing we didn't do is we did not allocate in the funding for benefits, so we probably need to add, what, Rosie, 12 to each position? Sorry.
Benefits.
We didn't allocate benefits, so we need to figure out what those are.
Okay.
Tanya, can you help us allocate?
We can give you the number 12,
All
not
right.
close.
Council Lady Johnson and Council Lady Murphy also have council office suggestions, requests.
So my council staff member request is kind of it's got a little bit of everything, because we are still working on job descriptions for the people that we have hired. It's something that I've worked with Mike Jameson about. I've had conversations with many of you here. Our personnel committee has discussed this, but I think while we have beefed up our staff and it's very helpful, I over the last weekend, over the holiday weekend, I spent some time cleaning out my inbox and realized how devastated I am not to have Suzanne Abel. And I think that no one person is going to be able to fill the role that she did. I do think that we need somebody we need to find within our staff that we have the constituent services piece that is dedicated to constituent the way that Suzanne was, but I think it would be helpful for a lot of us when we get kind of some of these ideas that we have someone researching and drafting some things for us, doing some research of what's already out there. Maybe someone who's actually able to meet with the department heads for us, because this is a part-time job. Maybe it's somebody who does communications for us or helps us with press releases. I wanted to throw that out there as something that we can decide together, but I think we need another type of lower entry-level person who can do that.
Council Lady Weiner.
Rosie, would you do us a favor? Could you give us a job description of what everybody in the office does, so that we can decide whether or not we're duplicating efforts?
And we've got that, and I've shared that with you, I know, but it definitely is something that needs to be learned. Yes, it does. Yes, it
With
did.
Kathleen, because we asked for a communication person to do press releases, to help schedule meeting. We had this is when David Briley, Vice Mayor Briley, asked us to get together, talk about what the needs were. And I don't know what the chairs did, but the FTEs we have, I don't think that their roles are aligned to what the council requested for positions that we had. I know I specifically said we need a communications person who is able to put together press releases, put those out, help us with flyers, scheduling meetings, and so forth. And I really don't know what the people we have in the office, like what their roles are. It's not very defined, so.
Great. Councilman Leonardo.
Does anybody know what Council Lady Johnson's business analyst position was?
I think
how
it's
it
a
differs?
duplicate request because the
Okay.
monetary amount is the same as Council Lady.
Councilman
I do
Davis.
support that.
Councilman Davis.
I think we all know that, of course, we need to give as much support to the council staff as possible. And we do need to fund an additional another position. But I think it's tough. This is just from my perspective, and I could be wrong. It's okay if I am. But we at the council, the reason why there may not be any defined roles, because they do so much for us.
They do everything.
And if nothing gets Rosie, if there's a vending machine that needs to be fixed in the council office, Rosie or one of the other wonderful folks will fix it. So it's kind of tough. You know, I mean.
Rosie the Riveter.
Okay.
You know, so. I mean,
Councilman Hastings.
I just wanted to just pick up a little bit. I wanted to give credit to where credit is due. I know Rosie has done a lot in spreading out responsibilities. We do have somebody now writing some information. Now, it may not be entailed to where we wanted to see that right away. I think the process is already rolling. I think if we give it a little more time, it'll be where it needs to be. Because our chief of staff is working her, you already know, we want her to go home a lot of time.
We do, but we need
the others, but hold on, Councilwoman. Hold on, Councilwoman. But what I am saying in this, and to point directly to what you're saying, is that they are doing those jobs. Hold on.
We asked specifically for a communications person. That means if I have some communications, who is the person doing the communications? No, it's 3 people. It's Doris.
Everybody.
It's Roseanne. It shouldn't be everybody because we asked for one specific person to be the communications coordinator for the council office. Now, if you look across the country at different council staff, they have a communications person, and that's their job. Their job title is communication. Rosie does everything, and she's.
So, as personnel chair, John, I'm happy to convene a special meeting just on this type of thing, separate from the budget.
All right.
If that would be more helpful
Well,
for this
here
conversation.
is a proposal. In the wish list that is circulated, have Rosie identify the positions and let council people vote for positions that they feel need to be filled by the council, and that'll be very important.
And Chair, if I can, back to Council Lady Murphy's point, I know you sent it to us, that was early on when we came on board.
Yeah.
Can you
I will
distribute
I am
that to us
planning on
again?
bringing it on again.
I think, I know Council Lady Henderson had a question, and then I'm going to ask people to generally be quiet at the table or step into the hallway. Council Lady Henderson?
I think my point's been made. I mean,
Okay.
I think there's some great ideas here about new staffing, but until we get our house in order about who does what and how our process flow works, you know, I'd like us to get there. And if we need the constraints of this budget to do it, then let's do it and figure it out
Okay.
in 2 years.
Yes.
All right, and again, we're not voting right now. We're informing each other.
We're discussing.
We're discussing. Public Works Councilman Elrod had a permit inspections question. I am not sure.
I'm not certain either, Chair.
And also curbside recycling, but we will be having another meeting, and we will hope to have a fuller discussion about that when he's there to advocate for
ag
that.
extension too.
And also ag extension. Councilman Bedney, I know, had police department 1 officer to address traffic issues only. Equally, we can ask for greater clarification
I can
from
tell you
him.
what that is.
Yes.
We talked about the high number of fatalities and pedestrians being killed. And when we ask about police staff, there's nobody designated toward traffic. It's kind of one of those rotating things. And what the business people in our area have expressed, and also just the neighbors, is to have a designated resource out of our police department that is to address traffic issues, because we do have an issue with it.
Thank you. One question I will ask Rosie to ask for us is the $150,000. Is that the right number for 1 officer?
Yes, I did get a thing from Chief Anderson.
From Chief Anderson that was confirmed at $150,000. Councilman Hastings.
Could you, and I know some things have been confirmed, but officers, other people that are not making $150,000, what does that one person?
Has a car.
Oh, it's a car.
And police cruisers, I believe, probably are very expensive.
Oh, we don't know. It doesn't say that.
Person in a car. Yes.
To address traffic issues.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Thank you all. Let's move on to Council Lady Van Rees, 54.
Hi guys. And now for something that feels a lot better. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, does anybody here have any question as to the value of 50 Forward, their fiscal responsibility, and the way in which they spend their money? I don't. I think they've done a really good job historically to do that. There was a request given to the mayor's office that was not fulfilled. A lot of it, I think, has to do with the new CEF way that things are changing over on that. But that request was made to me as well, and it affects 5 different 50 Forward centers. A request for $50,000 per center. That would be 50 Forward Bordeaux in District 2, 50 Forward Donaldson Station in 15, the Knowles Center in 17, the Madison Station in 8, and the Turner Center in 35. Of course, we know that these affect more than just the centers in which they sit, but also surrounding districts as well. There are a number of different programs that 50 Forward does, and I had forwarded to you through Rosie a list of some of those services just to remind you what it is that this money would do. I have actually a copy of the aforementioned letter from Lonell Matthews regarding the transition of CEF to CPF. And as I understand it, in FY19, they will be allowed to do a presentation along with other nonprofits to request money again. That to me gives me the assurance that giving them this money and their ability to show next year how well that money was spent will help them facilitate whether or not they continue to get the money. So it's not like, okay, here it is, and now what are we going to do next time? There is a way for them to do that in the following years.
Not necessarily the upcoming years going to require a match.
Which I think, you know, depending on how it is they present that will be up to them, right? But I think that for me, by being able to say, you know, here's a chance to prove what I'm confident in, which is here's your $50,000 senior center, put it towards programming, document how that was done, show us how it was used, and use that data to request future funding. So that's why that's in there.
Thank you, Councilman Hastings.
Yeah, I support 54, 110 billion% behind them. They are in my district. I mean, one day I'm gonna be that age and I'll be at 54, all right? So, and I know some people will get there before I will, all right? But this is the thing that I wanna say. Right now, we're looking at monetary, and I don't know if this is appropriate during that time. I don't know if $250,000 is going to be available during this period because of the fact we have so many big issues that we have to fill in the blanks for. $250,000, I don't feel that we're going to be able to do that right now.
I know we're not talking about funding sources at this time, but I disagree, and am happy to talk about that.
To get the sources. Councilman Roden.
Right by you.
I know I'm a big part of 50 Forward in Donaldson, and I know they received $350,000 from the state, and they were one of the.
Oh yeah. You got that on.
I don't live there.
Yo, keep it up, everybody. Yeah.
I know, I was gonna say.
I have nothing to say.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Anyway, so I know they received $350,000 from the state, and if we gave them 200, and it's my understanding they're one of the only programs in the state senior. And I really like them getting money because, like I said, it does great things for the Donaldson area. What I get concerned about is you have $350,000 from the state, you get $250,000 from Metro. If times get hard, this is where I get concerned. Is if you took away $600,000 or $700,000 from a program like this, what would that do to that? You know, to what people are counting on? And that's I just want to make sure that the money is always there. But I don't know if we can always count on it being there. So I don't know their finances, and I'm not saying this is. It's a great program. I know it is. It's just I want to make sure that we're always got the money there for them. I don't want it to be one day it just gets ripped out from them, and then you got people employed, or you've got services going out to people in the community, and then they're gone. And it's always worse when you take things away from people than it is when you give it to them.
Councilman Hager.
My question is, how do they decide where they're going to put them at? Because I tried to get
I've been trying to get one too, Larry. Get on the list.
Take a number.
You'll have to talk to them about that, Larry.
I know, but I tried to get them to come out and have a building full with Metro, and they wouldn't do it. So,
Okay. Any further discussion on 50 Forward? All right. Thank you, Council Lady. Again, we're not voting today. Councilman Schulman, Pulley, Davis, Johnson, former Councilman Coleman, in full motion for 2 amounts.
Gilmore.
Would Councilman Schulman? Gilmore?
I did this also at the request of Councilman Foley, but somebody may know more about this. I'm looking at Councilman Davis. He may know more about this than I do, so I would defer to Councilman Davis.
Okay, Councilman Davis.
All right, is everybody listening? Okay? Make sure, all right? Mr. Riegling, Talia, all the wonderful, the Queens men and ladies and everybody, are you listening? Okay? We have an issue facing our youth. This program has a high success program, better than the Kaplan program. It is only $50 per student, and they go for 8 weeks, some go for several weeks. This program has put lots of our kids, starting in middle school, all the way up to high school, got them into grade schools. They service schools in East, North, South, and West, all over. But there's a large concentration of children and teenagers in North and South that they service. A lot of us know the Fitzgeralds, okay? We have to find the money, okay? I have some ideas. I know we're not talking about that. But our former Minority Caucus Chair, Councilor Gilmore, did a great job finding money earlier, a couple years ago for them, and I thank you for that. And now we want to capitalize on that. And we need this money, okay, for this program. We're always talking about what's going on with the youth and how can we help them. This program works, and it is tremendous. I take kids to this program almost every Saturday. I drop them off. And you cannot get this kind of help for ACT prep anywhere else. And the problem is because of the new CEB or CFE, they can't apply, whatever it's called. Help me out with this. The BEF, CPF.
My best friend.
Yeah.
Let's just say what it is out loud, not these acronyms in the public.
So what is, I'm asking what is it?
Community. What?
It was part of the Community Enhancement Fund to be redone, community partnership.
And they're unable to apply this year. Okay, and I know that there's several council members wanting to help this program, and you know, I definitely want to help 54 also with their funding, but right now, this is an imperative for me. This right now is probably one of the most important things in this budget for. That hospital are on my top two. And so I really want us to focus on this and get this money.
Thank you. Councilor Weeder.
I have a quick question. I see two line items here, one for $75,000, one for $200,000. A, how many students does this apply to? And at $50 per student, which is it?
Let us ask a clarifying question from the Fitzgeralds and have that answer for you next week. Okay? Thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, me being a former student of Mr. Fitzgerald and his wife, who actually heads this program up, they actually work on ACT prepping for high school graduates and other things to put them inside, to help them to go to college. They have a really, really big success rate. I don't know if our budget is going to fit the numbers that are here, but I do know this is one of the programs that we need to look at.
Use your votes, Council Lady Henderson.
I was just going to ask for this investment fund. We have 501c3s that apply for this. I'm great to hear the good work that they're doing, but when we as a metro government are giving tax dollars back to 501c3 nonprofits, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure, you know, how well are they doing with their development efforts? What's the balance of their administrative costs to their fundraising? So whether 50 forward or in full motion, or
and that's what the CEF fund did, and what the Community Partnership Fund will do. There's some due diligence that's required before any awards are made, and so that was a benefit of that process.
Okay. And so in full motion and others that have gone through that same due diligence process?
Others have. I'm actually sending a message right now. I want to see if they ever applied for money through the old CEF.
Councilman Van Rees.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, it's very similar to the Metro Arts Commission and the nonprofits that apply for grant funding. Same process.
Okay, Councilman Davis?
If we can give $1 million to the entertainment music fund, if we can give $400,000 to other stuff, we can give them $200,000 to help our youth in the communities here in Nashville.
Okay.
And they have applied before. I don't know which year, but I know they were able to apply this year. And they're one of the few, you know, nonprofits that allows us here.
Thank you, Councilman. We're coming up to the last item. I appreciate everybody staying with me and being here. Yes.
The backfield in motion also gets a lot of free stuff, I know, from like NBA, when my son went there. They came out with fundraisers out there.
It's a different program there. It's a different program there.
So that backfield in motion?
No, it's informal, it's not backfield. It's two
Similar name. All right, Councilman Shulman, Councilman Weiner, public-private initiative. This is the last item. If we would stay together.
Mr. Chairman, actually, I had one other one that got left off.
All right, sorry.
But on this one, the funding on this is sort of wrong. I think there's two projects going on in this one. They just got mixed up together. Sister Cities is one. The one that I've got actually was listed for $300,000. It's that public-private initiative.
Okay.
All right. So if you remember that when the folks, the dignitaries from Belfast came over, they were here. They did all kinds of different things.
And when I was a queen, what was I?
When you were whatever that was. During those discussions, which is those sister cities relationships between our city and Belfast, there became a discussion about what if we took a lot of our country music and all the stuff that makes Nashville really exciting and took it over, and Belfast for a weekend or a week became Nashville. And what it was music, stuff that we do over here, turning their downtown into honky-tonks, all kinds of unique things going on. Great for tourism, great for economic development. And then there was a discussion that said, well, if we're going to go over there, Belfast will come over here. And so the Conventions and Visitors Bureau is now looking at that, where over St. Patrick's Day, Nashville becomes partly Belfast, and that is you have Irish pub crawls downtown, you have music on the riverfront, turn the city green. This is where we start making Nashville into a true international city. It keeps our tourism up. We start getting tourism from different places. If it works here, it could work with other sister cities. We have one in China. We have one in Australia. We have one in France. And so the idea is to start working through it. The initial seed money we thought was $300,000. We think it has tremendous potential. I'm talking to Councilman Swope, who has contacts as well. This could be a big deal that we start off with, and that's what this one is.
Council Lady Winter.
So to Councilmember Shulman's point, the global opportunities that Nashville has to really promote our brand is huge. When I was in China, 3 weeks ago or whenever it was, I had the opportunity to attend and speak to the Global Innovation and Entrepreneurship Fair, and there were 58 cities represented, 32 countries, and I was one of 5 speakers. And my topic was Nashville is the it city and how you too can have the coolest city in your country. And I can't tell you how many people came up to me after that from countries all over the world. Nashville's on my bucket list. What can we do? When can we come? How soon can you show us around? And then the conversation within the group that was there was, there's no place in the United States that offers a global innovation and entrepreneurship fair like this, and who better than us to put this together and showcase what we have to people all over the country. So to that end, and to several other things on your third piece of paper from me, the $20,000 that I asked for was from Sister Cities to fund a part-time position to help start to put these pieces together and to work in concert with CVB, the Chamber, the Mayor's Office, us, and a host of private entities that can put together a top-shelf program that can really kick us up on the global stage.
All right, thank you very much. This comes to the...
I got one more.
Oh, Okay.
Yeah. And this one's a lot more serious and actually a lot more important. In the budget this year, Metro Social Services put in $25,000 to open warming shelters when the temperature gets 25 degrees or below. Last year was Councilman Withers' district. They did an excellent job. It was at the East Community Center. The last time I checked, 25 degrees is freezing, so it's 32 degrees. We have people out on the streets at 32 degrees, 31, all the way down to 25. And the idea was maybe we should give them an additional $25,000 so when that temperature turns 32 degrees, we don't leave our citizens who may for some reason be out on the streets in the freezing cold. We ought to be opening shelters. There's a whole system that works. We have the mission, we have room in the inn, but it's not so easy that sometimes people don't have a place to go. This is about making sure that we protect our citizens who are freezing in the cold. And so that's what
How much? I have one question.
25,000 a day.
All right, Council Lady Weiner?
I have one
Then we'll wrap up.
question. Can we ask them to look at extreme weather conditions, tornadoes?
Sure.
Are just as dangerous, if not more so? And so I would like to look at extreme weather as the definition for when a shelter's open and what that would cost.
So, one last thing, I would encourage all of you, last year I went out sometimes at night, and I think some other people did in this room as well. You go out when it's 25 degrees, 26 degrees, and there are people out there freezing. We're talking about our citizens that we're here to protect.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for being here. Here are a couple of quick things that I need everybody, if you would give me your feedback on the following items. Appreciate everybody being down here. It's a different experience to be around the table. Do we want to come back here in this format again? Let me know. Okay, I appreciate that. Secondly, I will be around really every day until the end of the month at the council office. I'm not far away, just let me know. I will be there. Please look at your administrative at a glance pages. Highlight items that you feel perhaps should be changed. It's $355 million worth of spending. That is a source of funds. Next, please help Rosie, me, and Council Lady Bircher get a better wish list. Make sure your items are on and expressed correctly. This is a working draft as we recirculate these. Councilman Glover?
And can you let us know what department you're planning on bringing back?
Yes.
And I would appreciate greater than 15 minutes to spend with them.
I agree. Now, on our schedule going forward, I think by common consent, next week we've got committee meetings on Monday. You have council meeting on Tuesday. Suzanne Abel's funeral is on Wednesday. Okay. That it'll be Thursday the 8th at either 3 or 4. Perhaps it should be 3 in order to get us out at a regular time at 3 o'clock next Thursday, if you would reserve that. And then also, if you would reserve the 15th, Thursday the 15th, and that Thursday the 15th will probably be our sources discussion. Prior to passage of the budget on the 21st.
Say that, I'm sorry.
Our sources discussion, funding.
On which date?
On the 15th.
At 4 o'clock?
But the
We'll
8th,
get an email with all this, right?
we will do an email with all of this. But if you'd save both of those times, the 8th and 15th form, what I'm hearing is that this format is a good format for us, and I certainly appreciate it because I think we've had a better interchange than before. Yes, ma'am.
What time is Suzanne's class?
5 to 6 is visitation and 6 is the service that I'll send you all an email tonight. We just found out today.
Okay. And then with that, I appreciate everybody being here. Again, contact me, Rosie, Council Lady Bircher, and trying to bring all this information together. With that, we are adjourned.
Well,
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.